Good evening, everybody. I want to welcome everyone to our Authors Event series here at Brookline Booksmith. Tonight we are featuring Henry Horenstein and his book Speedway 1972 in conversation with the Ray Magliozzi. Before we hear from these brilliant speakers, we request that you keep your mobile phones on silent during the event. If you haven't yet picked up your pre-ordered book, or if you would like to buy a copy, you can find me at the back at the end of the event. And I would love to help you. And the signing will also be here at the front. We have Sharpies, and there will be a nice line right down the front of this aisle, as you see here. And it will be nice and fun. Also, we are live streaming this event, so unless you really want to be on the interweb, probably don't walk in front of the iPad while we are in the midst of the event, but that's just up to you. So I want to thank Ray Magliozzi for moderating the event this evening. He is best known for the 44-year-long run of the beloved radio show known as Car Talk, which he co-hosted with his brothers. The show was a joyful tool to discuss both cars and the human connection and relationships that bring automobiles to life. So this was the same connection that Magliozzi realized when first sorting through these photos while looking at the book for the moderation. So a better pair could not be put up here for this conversation.
Oh, they could have been.
And so this photographer that we are so excited to have here this evening is Henry Horenstein. He is our local Bostonian and a professor at RISD. He is a professional photographer, filmmaker, teacher, and author, and particularly from wonderful educational resources have been composed by him called Black and White Photography, Digital Photography, and Beyond Basic Photography. He has also several monographs of his own works with titles like Honky Tonk, Histories, Show, and Racing Days. And he also has a nice newer career in film creation with the newest Blitto Underground premiering in 2021. This book, I know, right? This book, Speedway 1972, is a collection of photographs from the speed races in New England during the 1970s, which would be attended by our photographer while he was in grad school, and it is a fascinating glimpse of what this world looked like in the days where small towns were still running the show. It is a beautiful documentation of humans who made all of the races happen too, and so I'm going to now pass it on over to you guys, and I hope y'all are going to enjoy the show. Thank you.
You're the moderator, right?
Well, I'm the moderator.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a moderator kind of guy. Hi, everybody. It's appropriate that this event should be held in a cellar. When Henry told me that he had unearthed these photographs in
Can you hear?
1970,
Is it too soft?
you know, but how about I do this? Move the mouse over here, the microphone over here.
How's that? Authorized personnel.
How's that? That better? Yeah, when Henry told me he had unearthed these photographs from 1972, he said he was going to put a book together. He asked me to look it over and let him know what I thought, and immediately disregarded everything that I told him. But he thought it was going to be a million seller. Instead, he's got 1 million of them in his cellar. And that's why we're all here tonight. But why did you invite me here?
Well, first I want to thank everyone for coming out to see me. Hi, Abby. Last time I was here, I think there were 3 of you, and you were all browsing in the fiction section. But anyway, when I did this book, the pictures, I should say, 50 years ago now. I did them, and that was that, and I put them in a box, and about 10 years ago, I was going through this box, and I said, hey, these got good. All of a sudden, it changed. They got, like, as they say, vintage, and, what people were wearing and all of that stuff. And I said, well, try to put a book together. It's taken 10 years, but finally got it together. And Ray, I've known since about when I took these pictures, right?
I believe so, yeah.
About that time, yeah.
I was only 7.
How did we meet? I can't even remember.
I think we met at a bluegrass festival in Rhode Island, a place called Escoheed.
Right.
And my brother Tom and I had become interested in bluegrass music. Well, he was the first one to discover it, and this band was playing every Tuesday night, excuse me, at Passim in Harvard Square. Joe Val and the New England Bluegrass Boys. And Tom said, you gotta come and hear these guys. So I went and I fell in love with the music. And then I heard from them that they were going to be playing at this bluegrass festival where we could hear other bluegrass bands. And it was in Escoheed, Rhode Island, wherever that is. And we found our way there, Tom and I did. And I remember that I'd never been to a festival before of this nature. And Henry was there taking photographs, kind of being a pain in the ass. The performers were on stage and they were trying to do their thing, and Henry was snapping photographs. And I do remember my brother decided, even though he had no idea that it was permitted, to bring his dog along. And he had a dog named Banjo that he had just gotten, and from the pound. And this fellow, Joe Val, whom we went to see, did a lot of really high tenor stuff in yodeling. And while he was, you can imagine what's coming next. While he was doing one of his numbers, he started to do, I think it was Freight Train Blues. And I can't do it because I have a sore throat, but he was doing this yodeling, and the dog started howling. And Joe was doing the yodeling, and Banjo, oh! And of course, everyone's trying to make the dog quiet, except for my brother. He didn't care. He was killing himself laughing. And the more Joe sang, the more the dog howled. And that's where I met Hank. And then after that, you were like air pollution, man. You were everywhere. Every place I went, there was Henry Horenstein, and we became friends. And then Henry says to me, play poker? And I said, yeah. He said, well, I got a couple of guys I play with. He said, they're mostly fish. He said, so if you'd like to come and play poker with us, he said, you might be able to pick up a few bucks. Well, that was pretty far from the truth. They were all sharps, and so was this guy. So I think I went, and this was back in 1972 or 3 or whenever it was.
Spider Cartwright.
Yeah, Spider Cartwright and Louis Rosenberg. I don't remember the rest of the
He
guys.
might be here tonight. I saw his
Hey!
here.
I'm Spider's brother.
And I, yeah.
That's right. That's Brian.
Hi, Brian. And I think I lost $50 that night.
It's big money in 1972.
Yeah, every time I had a good hand, someone would call me and they'd have me beaten. Oh. And it was tough going home and telling my wife that I had lost all of our grocery money. But that was another story.
I have advice for anyone here. Never play poker with a table full of MIT engineers. They know math, which is unbelievable, but yeah, bad idea.
And one of the guys we played with had the little card in his shirt pocket, which told him which hands beat other hands, like a straight pizza, two of a kind, etc. And every time he'd be looking at the table trying to figure out what to do, he'd pull the little card up and figure, oh, we've got him. And he won every time. He'd fake this out.
Oh my God. Well, anyway, I want to show you a little film, but apparently we need authorized personnel only. Do we have an authorized personnel person?
Yeah, we're good.
Oh, good. Okay, it's the wrong one, but that's the start, right? There was a little film that if you saw if you got an e-blast or whatever, or you want to look at it on my website, there's a little film of basically what we're doing now. Just talking.
A film of you and me?
Yeah.
Again?
You saw it.
Oh boy, it was so lousy.
It's well, you can, low budget. Let me see if I can find this here. Yeah, this was put together by my friend Bill Anderson, who I don't think he can't make it today. And let's see here.
When you took those pictures, when you were in college, he came out.
When I went to college originally, I studied history. I thought I'd be a history student, maybe teacher down the road. But I got to the point where I fell in love with photography and ended up going to photography school at Rhode Island School of Design, where I teach now. I did discover when I was in school that I needed to have some kind of a theme and kind of a way of shooting, particularly for my thesis. Really ended up digging back to my roots as a historian. My history teacher, when I was in college, was a man named E.P. Thompson. He was a very famous historian of his era, and his whole thesis was we have to document and record and preserve the people who would otherwise go forgotten. You know, I tried to apply that to my photographs and find subjects who I thought were there for the moment but probably would not be there forever. They needed to be celebrated too. That was what I was thinking about. And then my brother-in-law, Paul, who used to race stock cars at the Thompson Speedway in Connecticut, needed a photographer. And did I want the job? That job, those people, the places, the cars, the sport, the culture, the community, was exactly what my history teacher was talking about, that this world would disappear. And they needed to be preserved because they were part of history like everybody else was. It's what these pictures in Speedway 1972 are all about. Not about the sport. I didn't really care about the sport so much, but they were about the community and the culture of the people that raced and got together. But my idea really hinged on the fact that this world was going to disappear. Well, I went back a couple of years ago, and you can see that it's not only not disappeared, but it's become a bigger deal.
I've been there since I was 7 years old. I started cleaning the grandstand at 7 at 35 cents. From the time I was 7 years old, I'm still there.
Started working in the concession stand, and then put those guys out on the track crew on the infield, and I've been there ever since. So I've been there for 48 years. It's loud and dirty, and you know, you hear the cars and the people cheering and or you know, whatever, and you hear all the different sounds.
Back in those days, in the 70s, the racetrack was dirt bank. It wasn't concrete at all. The bankings were dirt. And it seemed like every third or fourth week, somebody would fly out of the racetrack.
One of the guys, he flipped over. You know what he had for a seatbelt? He had his belt and a football helmet on.
The people. I go back because of the people. The racers, the officials, and all of it. They go back to the people as much as anything else. It's their own community.
And the people are still there coming out. Now, I don't know if that's going to be true in 50 years more, but for now, I guess I was wrong about that. But I think I got some pretty good pictures and a document of a certain time in a certain place in a certain community. And that's what the book is all about.
Just getting unbuckled from the double zero. He crashed on the opening lap, but it didn't hold down. Woody Kit Kat has won tonight in the Sudoku modifieds, and he did it in dramatic style. Going out front, taking down the checkered flag at the end, he'll pick up an extra 150-hour bonus. Special bonus tonight, double the normal, so Woody Kit Kat will cash in on that cash surprise.
Well, you know, one of the reasons I asked Ray to do this was I knew he'd fill this place if he was involved. So that was part of it. And but the other reason is, and he writes about it in the introduction, although we didn't talk about anything really, but he came up with it, and I kind of knew where he was going with it, but he, even in the show, he wasn't so much interested in the cars, and the questions about, you know, how the
How to
carburetor
adjust
works.
the valves on your Nissan or something. Well, they were called Datsuns then.
Datsuns, right? And but he was more interested in the people. And the same thing is true with me. You know, sometimes I'll do a project like this, and people say, "Oh, that's nice. Where are the cars?" You know, and so that's the same interest as I have.
Well, when you showed me these pictures, the first thing that looked into mind was, what a bunch of jalopies these things are. There was nothing really interesting about the cars,
Right.
except how banged up they were. And I was wondering, did they look this banged up before the races started? You said, yeah. So they didn't start off looking good, and after every race they looked even worse. And there was no attempt made to fix them up. No.
No.
So it was a game of survival, I guess. If your car, it or you, could survive the whole race,
You won.
you won.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting.
Well, we could look at a few of the pictures if you want, just see what you know, an expert thinks about them.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. If I can find this.
I will say that I was then unable to identify the make and model of most of these cars.
They were all Chevrolets, I think.
No, I don't know about that, but
DeSoto's.
the sodas, my God.
So only I know that because my dad had one. There we go. You don't have to talk about them, but if you have anything to say, you're 29.
What is that?
It's a car wreck.
Well, it's not a DeSoto, that's for sure. And it could be a Chevrolet. So this is 1972?
72, all of them. And,
Well, they might have been older than that. I mean,
Oh, yeah,
you wouldn't
yeah.
do this to a car that's relatively new. These might have been 62s.
or worse.
Or worse, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, next slide, please.
I remember when I first met you, I had a 64 Dodge Dart, and that worked all the time, except in the rain. That was the job I did, by the way. My job, or as my brother-in-law said, call it an internship, was that picture of the program. I was the program photographer, which sounds like a low-end kind of job, and it was, but nobody turned me down for a picture. I'm doing the program. So that's,
Everybody wants to be in the
everybody
program.
wants to do the program. Or
I might add that these are the two best-looking people that you photographed. I don't know who they are, but
Yeah,
yeah,
they probably don't look so good now.
Well, no, they,
What's that? I even
Oh, that's
know
a
what that
Chevy.
is. I told you they're all
yeah,
Chevy.
that's a Chevy. I guess it's a 1910.
Yeah, that's the nicest looking car there.
That might be like a 62. I had one of those once. Yeah.
You look good in those pants, right?
I have a pair like that actually, but I was gonna wear them tonight, but
You should have.
the season didn't fit,
Is that company still in business?
Amley, no, I was gonna say, I think they've been out of business for 37 and a half years, but I could be wrong.
These kids, juvenile delinquents in practice, trying out.
So this was the kind of the tail end of not the tail end, maybe the middle of the hippie period.
Kind of middle, I think.
Yeah, right
I
smack
see
in the
some
middle.
people might remember it, some people here. Middle, do you think? Middle?
Little later.
Little later.
Late hippie period?
Yeah, late hippie.
Yeah. Early.
We're moving into disco pretty soon.
Oh yeah, definitely. Disco is right around the corner.
Right around the corner, punk disco, whatever. Yeah, these are, what's funny about this picture, in 1972, very few companies or restaurants or any bars, whatever, had printed t-shirts.
Oh really?
It was just coming in then. I know that because I worked for a while doing t-shirts. And
You should have stuck with it. You could have been somebody.
I know. And we went down to Tootsie's Orchid Lounge, which I know you know, Ray, in Nashville. And we did the first Tootsie's T-shirt in 1973. First time they had a T-shirt. Now if you go there, they sell like 40 a minute,
Oh, yeah,
like
yeah.
really popular. But in those days, not that many people had them, you know. That's,
Oh, this is the royal family.
yeah. You know, a lot of the people there, that community extends to the fans and as well as the drivers, and a lot of the people in the, I mean, they brought along their, unfortunately, it was a Catholic area, so they all had like 10 or 15 relatives, so that's,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
that's pretty much how it rolled, yeah. Can't believe he's wearing white, what is it?
Oh, no, it's one must have been before Labor Day. Imagine. Well, by the way, he looked like the most well-groomed guy in the group there.
He's looking good.
He's pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's an old Chevy.
It's a Chevy?
Yeah, it's seen its better days, but it was, at one time, it was a wonderful car.
Ray Jr. Yeah. Have you ever
These are guys stealing tires, but they paid their debt to society. They moved on. I think this guy is now a college professor.
Semi-honest. Let's see.
Oh, that's an interesting guy.
Well, they raced until through the fall, so it could get chilly out there. Who would, I'm sorry?
No. Is that in the book?
Yeah, I think so.
I must have missed it.
There you go.
What's his name? Deke.
Geek.
You had to have a handle, right? So did you ever think that you'd get behind the wheel of one of these cars? Did you ever? Never had that notion of.
Never. I wasn't. You know, I had.
This young lady's in the
Ford
audience
Fairlane.
tonight. She's sitting about
I saw her.
6 rows back.
She's looking to sue for improper use of photographs.
Were you shooting square format?
I was. Oh, good, a question. I mean, a question I could answer. I was shooting an odd camera. It was called a Rolleiflex Wide, or Rolly Wide it was called. And they only made 4,000 of them at that point. I think they tried to come back with it and it failed, but Charlie, you might know more about this than I do, the history, because you're kind of geeky that way. Yeah. That sound right?
Yeah, that's right.
Rolly Wide, I think it was a 55 millimeter fixed
55
lens,
millimeter, yeah.
55. And they made 4,000 of them. I had 2 of them. One in beautiful shape, one terrible shape. Looked like the cars. Yeah. And they were all square because of that.
I love it when you talk nerdy.
Yeah, it gets worse. I'll shut up.
You know, when I was, I think, a sophomore in college, a bunch of us, we had this non-resident student house that we crashed in, basically. It was just a place to hang out during the day. We were a bunch of students who were commuters and would have no place to stay, no dormitory to stay, whatever, so we had to hang out at some place, and they had a few cots in case you got stuck there in a snowstorm, but we became pretty close with most of the guys that were there. It was all guys, as you might expect, but a lot of the guys were into photography. They were very much into photography, and one of them got approached. He had a camera of some kind, and he got approached by some guy who said he had some cameras for sale. And I wasn't interested because I wasn't interested in photography. I was interested in being on the other end of the camera, but I didn't want to be taking any photographs. And he convinced these 6 or 7 very bright MIT guys to each give him $200 cash, so he could go out and procure purloined. What was the best camera? Rolleiflex? Was that a camera?
Nikon Rolleiflex.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that then.
And these fellows questioned it for a minute, but their desire to have these cameras was so great that when he said, "Look, if you don't want them, forget it," and they all said, "No, we want them. Here's the money." Of course, they never saw him again, or the cameras. But lesson learned.
Those days, and some of you remember, MIT did have an important photography program, one of the few.
Well, these guys weren't allowed into it, I don't think.
Well, Minor White was the teacher, and in order to get into a workshop with him, he read your astrological chart. It was the 70s, so we had the same birthday. Minor White. So they did have women. Yeah, they probably had one race a night.
What is
for
your
women.
birthday, by the way? I don't know.
July 8th. What are you telling me?
No, I just want to make sure I'm out of town.
You usually are.
I am.
There you go. And the cover of the book.
This guy is something. Like nothing compared to his car. I can't imagine that thing was ever driven. Looked like a building fell on it. And him too, maybe.
This is Sean Penn gone bad.
Yeah, he's kind of a Sean Penn lookalike.
Does anyone have any questions? More questions? Square pictures?
This
Oh,
young
is
lady has a
different.
question.
Where are you?
Oh,
Okay.
here I am. Hi.
Hi.
Do you know the people that are in the book? Like, as you took
No.
the pictures, you didn't know anyone's name?
Not a soul.
And does
But-
anybody recognize themselves? now that
Well, there's I was looking for the video, I can't find it, but I think it's in, I don't know, if you email me, I'll get you a Vimeo link to it. I couldn't find it. My computer crashed just before I came here, so I've kind of made it up. I don't know this computer, so I can't find it on this. But about 10 years ago or so, I was showing my pictures to my students, which I like to do, and get their feedback. And one of the students says, oh my God, like 20 times. And she said, that's where I live. My grandfather's best friends were the owner of the track. They go hunting, fishing, blah, 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 drink together. And I said, wow, can you get some IDs for some of these pictures? And she said, yes. So she took Xeroxes of all the pictures, brought them down to the VFW hall in Thompson, and got 80% of them
Wow.
ID. Nobody left Thompson.
Well,
Nobody.
one of those towns.
Yeah. And not because they were having a good time. So anyway, so that's kind of, what was the question?
I had asked if anyone had recognized themselves.
Oh,
in the book.
they were looking, the guys were looking through them. That's, if you want, I'll send you the link. And they're going through, oh, that's so-and-so, yeah.
Of course, yeah.
He's dead.
Yeah.
How'd he die? He was in a crash. Anyway, it's pretty good, so. Anybody else?
So these cars had no protections really for the
I
drivers.
don't
I mean,
think so.
no roll cages or,
No.
you
They
know,
weren't going that fast, so.
speed kills, we know, but you're entitled to low speed too. Especially those jalopies.
Anyone else? Yeah.
You started to mention that there would be a race for women, like maybe one each.
Maybe one
time,
race a day.
And only women would race that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a little patronizing.
But at least they had it.
At least they had it.
Well, that was 1972. Women were not allowed to run in the Boston Marathon in 1972. Women in Switzerland had just gained the right to vote. Do you believe that?
Yes.
So, I think 1970. That's preposterous, isn't it?
Yeah.
Henry, it's more of a comment, but I was at the Thompson Speedway a couple months ago.
Oh, you were?
They have a swap meet. All the
Yeah.
racers trying to unload all their racing crap.
Oh, that's a good
And
idea.
then they bring everything else from their house. It's pretty good people watching. You'd like it.
We ought to go down there,
It'd be
pick up
fun.
some stuff.
I know.
Just
Some
start a new
wheels,
garage.
some wheels or something. You never have too many wheels.
Well, it's good to know it's still hopping.
Yeah.
Have they started building the monument for Henry? I mean,
They are still working on the foundation.
I thought so.
Yeah. I'm sorry? Summer. Just one summer, that's it. I was in graduate school and, I talk about it a little bit in that video, but I had gone to school in history for 4 years and I knew what I was doing there. But when I went over to photography, I had no clue. still probably don't, but I didn't know how it worked, you know, but I was in graduate school, I had to come up with a project. So when I found out about this, it kind of hooked into what I knew about history. And that's, you know, that's how I was able to finish it and make sense of it.
How, pray tell, did you form that connection between photography and what you were learning in history? I just pretty curious.
Well, Ray knows stuff. Well, I left my senior year under, you know, some
Under pressure.
under pressure. I was trying to say it a little nicer, but
Yeah,
no.
don't sugarcoat it.
No, it's under pressure. And, you know, good news and bad news. The good news, I mean, it was kind of, I look back at it now, it's like, I'm dating this woman, you know, and it's going good, and I'm 20 years old, and, you know, the parents even know each other, and, you know, she's great, and, but a little boring if I really, you know, and I'm thinking, I got another 80 years to live, you know, I'm only 20. So, isn't there something
Being
else
optimistic,
out
I would say.
there? And I meet this woman who's amazing, funny, smart, wise ass, hot, you know, and everything. I go, And, but, you know, I don't know anything about her. She could be crazy, probably was. She could hate me, probably did. And,
Eventually.
Eventually. You know, I should probably, you like that too well, I think. Anyway, so I'm kind of like, and then I go back home and the safe girl breaks up with me. And I'm free to pursue the wild thing, you know. And that's kind of sort of what happened, you know, because I was like tinkering with photography, but now I was out of work, out of my field, basically because I was thrown out of school. And so that's what I did. I started doing photography, but I didn't really know what I was doing too much. I learned, you know, 20 years later, but I did, you know a lot about history. So I was able to pull that in. Yeah, hi.
Hi, so, at times where you were taking photographs of people that wasn't for the program, how do you engage them so that you can take a good portrait?
Different ways. Sometimes I'm sneaky. That's the best way. You know, some people think that they ought to really get to know their subjects, you know, and get to know them and be empathetic. And I don't think that at all.
Henry used furtiveness.
And if I could pronounce it, I would. That's how I would have answered. But no, I'll usually ask them. I'm hardly ever turned down. You know, usually people are flattered or they don't really care, you know, and they say, okay. And some of the best pictures for me that I ever made, I made in a second or so. I was listening to, I don't know if you know this, you know Cocaine and Rhinestone, that podcast? Some people might know. It's great stories about country music.
Mm-hmm.
And he's, you know, half the great songs, he's like talking to people or telling stories and everything. They write them in 15 minutes.
Yeah, well, it's pretty obvious sometimes.
Yeah, that's true. But, you know, they're like, oh, I gotta, you know, he writes a couple of notes on the, you know, and then he goes home and finishes it and heads for the cooler.
Pretty good, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to have a top 10 hit anytime soon, but, you know, I think you just have to approach people the way you are and be, you know, be yourself.
Well, Henry always had a non-threatening personality.
Threatening?
You know, you know, when he asked if he could take a photo of you, he'd say, yeah, sure, man. You don't look like an axe murderer, you know. And so you got away with it. You know, it was lucky for you. Yeah.
Luck?
Don't ever discount luck.
No, I don't. I hope for it. Yeah.
So did this end up part of a thesis project?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I mean, it was part of it. I just, you know, in those days, you took pictures and you showed them, and maybe in class people would go, that works. Or they say, that doesn't work. Or, you know, and that was the end of the conversation. And today you have to have an artist statement for each picture. And you have to have an artist statement before the art, actually. You know, so which is good because a lot of people don't have the art. So it was different then, you know. So I'm sure it was some kind of a combination of things. I doubt if I wrote an artist statement. Tom, are you still here?
Leave me out of this.
Yeah, when I wrote my first artist statement, I was told I had to write one, and I'd never written one before. And Tom and I were working together, and so I did the smart thing, which is, he was in graduate school, so he knew how to write an artist statement. So he wrote my first artist statement. Turns out I was a little smarter than I thought I was. I used metaphor, apparently.
Wow.
Didn't know that, but, you know.
We don't need to know. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Anyone else? Any other questions?
Are
Anybody?
any of your students photographing like this?
Badly, you mean? You know, what I do these days isn't exactly that popular among the younger set. You know, they're more interested in not going out to take pictures. No, they're interested in other things, you know, as to be expected, you know. And this is, you know, comes from, I'm doing a book now, which I'll be back to talk to 3 of you next year. You know, it's a book that looks and reads like it was done in the 30s by Walker Evans, and it's not as good as that, but you know, it looks like it could have been done then, and I love it, you know, but I don't think it's the kind of thing that people are teaching in graduate school now.
I have a question. So, when you shot these photos in 1972, they're obviously shot on film.
Yeah, yeah.
How much stuff is on film nowadays if you do?
For me, nothing.
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 You single-handedly put the film people out of business.
I might have. I shot like that.
Does anyone shoot?
Yeah,
film?
Logan.
Logan, yeah.
Logan does, and there may be someone else out there, but Charlie, maybe. No more. If Charlie's giving it up, it's over. I can tell you that.
So do you see film having a resurgence, like
It is.
like vinyl's coming back,
Yeah,
right?
it is, right? I mean, do some people know that, right? I'm teaching a lot of darkroom classes, and they're all filled.
Really?
Yeah. So they're at least selling that much film.
Well, that's pretty good.
Yeah, not bad. Yeah, it's like vinyl, you know. I think, my theory, and I don't really know, but if you go to almost every class you take as a student, you are in front of a computer all day and doing computer stuff. And you don't interact with anyone, a little bit, but not much. If you go into a darkroom class, you're talking to people, you're, you know, meeting people, you're changing ideas, you find a drinking buddy maybe you get a date, who knows? Could run a Tinder or something. But, you know, it's much more social, and it's different. than
Well, the
other
darkroom
stuff
thing is
we do.
more hands-on.
Much more hands-on,
Yeah.
Remember, I don't think you talked about it there, but tell them about Hackers Haven. Speaking of hands-on.
Talk about hands-on.
Does anyone remember Hackers Haven? Ah, there you go. A satisfied customer.
So when I graduated from college, I got a job teaching school, of all things, in Bennington, Vermont. And my brother, who was at the time engaged as I think a petrochemical engineer, of all things, at a company called Foxborough Company, which I think he was responsible for putting out of business, but that's another whole story altogether. And he would call me about every week and implore me to return to Boston because he had this brilliant business idea. And he had a co-worker who was going to be our partner, and we were going to open a do-it-yourself auto repair shop. The idea being that we would rent people a spot out of the elements with, you know, a trouble light and tools and, you know, everything you needed, a lift and whatnot. And we would be there in advisory capacity. We were like those first people that went to Vietnam back in the 1950s, you know, to counsel the soldiers, the revolutionaries. And Tom, in Tom's own words, our biggest problem would be getting enough wheelbarrows to get the money out at the end of every month. We were gonna make a fortune. It was such a novel idea. We were gonna charge $2 an hour to rent a bay, so we had this great big building. And, on,
Central Square.
yeah, it's right on Lansdowne Street, and, we rented it from, who else? MIT, they owned the building, you know, and it was, boy, that was some fun, because we attracted every nut job, without exception. And within a 10-mile radius, they found us, and they came in, and I remember, so I have an extra guitar in my house. I have an old Gibson guitar, 6-string, you know, acoustic guitar, and I came to own it because these two, what's the right word, stoners, came into the shop, and they had to rebuild an automatic transmission on some Jaguar XKE or something. So I asked if they knew anything about it, and they said, no, don't worry, we got the book, and you guys are here to help us if we need it. Well, they took the thing apart, and they just put all the parts in a box. And then when they realized they couldn't put it back together again, they asked us to help. And Tom and I spent like hours and hours and hours. And as luck would have it, we got the thing to actually work, at least to get them out the door. But as they instead of paying their bill every day, which would have been the prudent thing to do if we were good business people, we said, look, when you're all done, you can pay for the whole thing. Well, when they got all done, they owed us about $550 in bay rental. And of course, these guys didn't have $550. And they wanted to take the car out, and they did have this Gibson guitar. And I tuned it up, and I strummed a few chords on it. And they said, look, hold on to this thing. When we get the money, we'll come back. I was like a pawn shop. And I still have the guitar. And I realized many years later that the reason they parted with it so willingly is that the neck had broken off of it. And they had somehow managed to glue it back together. But to this day, here it is 50 years later, almost, the thing still works. It's pretty cool. I have my doubts about the transmission. Too far. Maybe that's why they never came back. But those were the kinds of people that the garage attracted, and it was an interesting experience.
Was that the Good News Garage?
Well, it later morphed into Good News Garage.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we had a partner. It was an unfortunate partnership, and he decided that he didn't want to be partners with us anymore. We were happy because we didn't want to be partners with him anymore. So he kept Hackers Haven and the name, and we opened up Good News Garage. I don't know exactly where the name came from, but within a matter of 6 months, he had run Hackers Haven into the ground. And we, of course, still have the wheelbarrows waiting to fill them up. And eventually we abandoned the do-it-yourself business because the insurance industry drove us out of business. The premiums kept going up and up and up because the risks were too high. We had a few fires and explosions, I mean, nothing serious, but they got upset about that, you know, and they didn't want to insure us unless we paid these ridiculous premiums. And we eventually just became a regular repair shop. And that's the whole story. And then, of course, I remember now. My brother was between wives. And so a lot of my travails and troubles in life I can attribute to my brother. And he thought that a good way for him to meet young women was to offer a car care course at the garage, where you would learn some hands-on stuff, but you would learn a lot of how your car worked. And he got, I'm sure, quite a few dates out of that. And but it meant many long weekends at the shop, and which I had a family to raise. I couldn't be doing that, but he was free as a bird, and we never made any money doing that either. You know, but we did get some customers. But one of the things that happened as a result of that was that somebody who took one of those courses happened to work for WBUR in Boston, and he asked if we would be willing, Tom and I, to participate in a panel discussion with 5 or 6 other area mechanics one short deal would be on a Saturday morning, we'd be sitting there in front of, 5 or 6 or 7 microphones or whatever. And this moderator, whose name I've forgotten right now, but it'll come to me, would ask us questions. And I thought it was a terrible idea. My brother was looking for an opportunity to get out of work for a few hours, so he went, and he was the only one who showed up. And the moderator asked, Tom wanted to beg off, and Tom said, no. He said, is there any way we can take questions from the listeners? And Car Talk was born that day. And so I gotta give him credit for one genius idea out of all the crappy ideas he had. So, I remember the guy's name, it was Vic Wheatman. And he asked if we could come back the next week and do the thing all over again. And he said to Tom, he said, of course your brother will come with you. And I said, yeah, okay, I'll go. And we thought we might get a few customers out of it from the BU community. And I show up with Tom, and there's no Vic. Vic, for whatever reason, I don't know what happened, had gotten fired in the intervening week. And he left us a note. He said, good luck, guys, and try to watch your language. And that was about 6 minutes. And of course, they put us on 7-second delay because they knew they couldn't trust us. And then Tom and I sat there, looking at each other, saying, "Well, what do we do now?" And the engineer is in a little room, and the light comes on that says you're on the air. Of course, we don't know what the hell the light means. And Tom asks, "Are we on? Does that mean we're?" And we stumbled along like that for about 10 years, doing the show just locally, until finally someone at NPR thought it was prudent to give us our own show. Can you imagine that? So I think that was the one who introduced us, 44 years or something. The show was on the air. Could have been. Yeah. And that's where I got to meet my good friend Bill Littlefield, who's in the audience tonight. You may remember Bill from It's Only a Game. And Bill is now retired. And so it's good to see you here tonight. I had no idea you were going to be here.
Well, I heard you guys going to be here. I had to be. I mean, I got probably 4,000 bagels. Every time you and your brother would sit down to have breakfast, there was always a chair for me, and I was very grateful.
Oh, yeah.
And
Bill had the best nose for bagels in the whole station. We opened the bag of bagels, Littlefield was right there.
one of the great benefits of working for public radio was a lot of food around a lot of the time.
There was always a lot of food. We'd have bagels before we did the show.
I had a guy hired there for a while, and his whole job was to keep me away from the sugar buns and the bagels that were meant for the volunteers at the fundraiser.
Oh, yeah.
The guy, I work here. I would get out.
Those are a lot of fun, weren't they? Those fundraisers.
And another thing I should mention, since it's Henry's book you're talking about, Henry and I did a book together.
I was just going to say, text writers are two of my worst selling books. Right in this room together. Bill and I did a book called Baseball Days.
Henry's a
pretty good book.
photographer, so it wasn't easy to kill that book.
Took a lot of work.
Henry did a book called Racing Days with a wonderful writer named Brendan Boyd. And when Brendan found out that Henry and I were going to do Baseball Days, Brendan came up to me and he said, "I just have to tell you, the one thing that's going to happen, and you can't let it get to you, you can't let it, depress you and get you down." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Well, what people do when they look at books like this, they look through and they say, oh, geez, what a beautiful picture. Oh, my God, look at this picture. Holy cow, what a beautiful picture." And then they say, "What's all this writing on the picture?"
Takes work to read.
Picture is worth 1,000 words.
Anybody else? How we doing over there? Yeah, sure.
I want to just make a comment. I've been going to the races since I there is a huge culture of photography at the races today, and just with the technology and phones, like I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands of pictures get taken on any given race day. But the professional photographers who are there are generally doing it out of a passion for the sport. I really liked in your introduction how you said whether or not you got paid, you couldn't remember. You probably got like a free hot dog at the hot dog stand.
I don't think so, but good.
I
remember.
Races, so that has not changed.
Yeah.
But very few of the photographers who are there in a semi-professional or professional capacity are in the grandstands.
Yeah.
You never see that perspective, and it's my main interest for being there. I'm very interested in the fans' perspective and the fans' experience. So when I saw your book, I actually bought it at Thompson this past October. They have a
It was
book
selling it,
table.
really? Wow.
That was the one.
It's amazing. It's the best seller.
And the woman was probably 90 years old if she was a day, and she wrote down my credit card number.
Wow.
But she had there was a whole table of books, because they take their history very seriously.
Oh, yeah.
And they're very proud, and there's legends and heroes and all of that stuff. But there's a graphic element at the races that's very much racetrack graphics. It's very sensational, neon,
Right.
Illegible mostly. But your black square book on this table was like, what is that? And going over and looking at it and seeing these pictures in it and seeing that perspective and just it was electric for me, because I've never seen anything like it before.
Yeah.
And it's what I'm aspiring to do. It's what I'm inspired to do, and I'm very, very grateful.
Well, hang on to that work, and in 50 years you'll be able to publish it.
You might be right here.
Well, thank you. That's very nice. Thank you. Yeah.
How many images did you have to go through to decide what would be?
Not as many as you'd expect, because in those days, now with digital, I'm sure everybody's this way, but I shoot
9
way
million. Oh,
too
sure.
many pictures. And in those days I didn't shoot them, and I'd have to go home and develop them. Plus it was expensive. I didn't have much money then. So, so not that many, surprisingly. Yeah. But they were all great.
Yeah.
Every one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you have a lot of old prints to look at, or did you have to
I
digitize
contact
negatives?
sheets. I went back to the negs, and yeah.
So there's still a lot of negatives around?
Of mine, generally. Oh, yeah.
Oh, they're negative.
You want to
right?
buy some?
He has the negatives.
Look at his cell. Look at his cell. Yeah, no, a lot, and God knows how many pictures I have in digital form, But a lot of those too, a lot more.
Yeah.
Well, if anyone wants to come and chat after, or ask questions, or buy 5 or 6 books, we're available to sign.
Yes, by all means.
And if you want to just come and say, hey, a lot of good friends here I haven't seen for a while, so thank you. In fact, Brian is my roommate from those eras, his brother. Spider Cartwright was my roommate in 1972, so there you go. Your older brother.
Yeah.
Well,
Your poker mentor, I trust.
Well, Spider cheated like crazy.
Is that his secret?
I think he did, and I always wondered about you and Tommy, whether you were
No.
telling each other what. No.
No, we weren't that smart. But Henry had the ability to introduce new games all the time, games we had never played that he was expert in, like shifting sands. Who the hell ever heard of shifting sands?
My favorite game.
Anyone ever heard of shifting sands? No, I didn't think so. Henry Horenstein invention. Of course, he won every time. Well, dealer advantage, I guess.
Inventors advantage. Well, thank you very much. Thank you.